You ruined this family the day you walked through that door. My son deserved better, and so does that baby. You are nothing, Marjorie. Absolutely nothing.
She looked me dead in the eyes, raised her hand, and slapped me across the face hard. I was 8 months pregnant. My cheek was burning. The room went completely silent. 40 people in that house and not one single person made a sound, but there was one man standing just 4 feet away from me, glass of water in his hand. He saw every single thing. He was worth $300 million, and he never forgot what he saw. Neither did I. What you are about to hear is the kind of story that will make your blood boil and your heart race at the same time. A mother-in-law who believed that money gave her the right to destroy people. A pregnant woman who had nothing left but her dignity, and one powerful witness who changed absolutely everything. Stay with me until the very end because every single part of this story gets more intense than the last. Hit that like button right now, subscribe, and do not go anywhere. This is the story they never wanted me to tell. My name is Marjorie, and this is my truth. I was 26 years old and I was happy with my simple life. I taught 3rd grade at a neighborhood school. My kids called me Miss Marjorie, and every single morning when they ran into my classroom with their backpacks bouncing and their shoes untied and their faces full of light, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My mother raised me alone after my father passed away when I was just 11 years old. She worked double shifts at a laundry for years so I could finish school. She never complained, not once, she just kept going. And I learned everything I ever needed to know about strength from watching her hands, always moving, always working, always building something from nothing. I met Ryan at a friend's wedding on a warm Saturday afternoon. He was standing near the dessert table looking slightly lost, and I laughed at him for it. He laughed back. We talked for 3 hours straight that day about everything and nothing. He was funny and warm, and he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. For a girl who had spent most of her life being overlooked, that feeling meant everything. We dated for a full year. He was patient and consistent, and he showed up every single time he said he would. After 1 year, he got down on one knee in my tiny apartment kitchen, no restaurant, no crowd, just the two of us, and asked me to marry him. I said yes with my whole heart. What I did not fully understand then was the world I was walking into. Ryan's family owned 3 luxury hotels across the city. They had been in the hospitality business for over 30 years. Their name was on buildings. Their photos were in business magazines, and at the center of all of it was his mother, Linda. Linda was not just Ryan's mother. She was the engine of that entire family. She made every decision, controlled every relationship, and moved every person around her like pieces on a board. The first time I met her, she looked me up and down slowly, the way you look at something you're not sure you want to buy, and then she smiled and said, "How sweet." Ryan always did have a soft spot for simple girls. She said it like a compliment. It was not a compliment. I felt it in my chest immediately, but I smiled back and told myself that people take time to warm up. I told myself love would be enough. That was the second mistake I made. The first was believing that a woman like Linda would ever let someone like me into her world without a fight. Ryan and I got married in a small ceremony because Linda refused to contribute to what she called a wedding that was beneath the family name. We paid for everything ourselves. It was simple and beautiful, and I was happy. After the wedding, Ryan suggested we move into the family estate temporarily to save money while we looked for our own place. Temporarily, that word did me a lot of damage because 3 years later we were still there. 3 years, and in those 3 years Linda had slowly and carefully built a cage around me, so quietly and so gradually that I barely noticed until the door was already locked. It started with small things. Linda would rearrange the kitchen and not tell me. She would invite guests for dinner without informing me and then act irritated when I was not prepared. She would give instructions to the household staff directly, staff that I lived with every single day, and tell them not to bother me with details. Then the bigger things started. She told Ryan that my teaching job was embarrassing. That a woman with the family name attached to her should not be working a government school job. Ryan came to me one evening and sat on the edge of the bed and said, in the gentlest voice he could manage, that maybe it was time for me to think about leaving work. He framed it as a gift, more time for me, more time for us. I quit my job, and the moment I did, I lost the only piece of myself that was fully mine. After that, Linda moved faster. She started commenting on what I wore to family events. She would call Ryan during the day, always when I was nearby, and have long conversations about business decisions and family plans, never once including me. When guests came to the house, Linda would walk them through every room, introduce every person, tell every story, and simply skip past me like I was a piece of furniture she had forgotten to replace. Ryan saw it. He saw all of it. And every single time I brought it up at night, alone in our room, he would sigh and say the same thing. "That's just how she is, Marjorie. She doesn't mean it." I started keeping a journal around this time. I do not even know exactly why. Something deep inside me, some quiet instinct, told me to write things down, dates, words, exact sentences, incidents. I filled page after page and kept the journal hidden at the back of my wardrobe. I had no plan yet. I just wrote, and I waited. When I found out I was pregnant, I sat on the bathroom floor for a long time before I said anything to anyone. I was scared. Not because I did not want the baby, I wanted that baby more than I had ever wanted anything in my life. I was scared because I already knew what was coming. I already knew that Linda would take this, the most personal and sacred thing that had ever happened to me, and turn it into something she could control. And I was right. Ryan was overjoyed for about 2 weeks. He held my hand and talked about names and painted a picture of our future that was so beautiful it almost made me forget where we were living. But then Linda found out, and everything shifted. She booked her own doctor without asking me. She announced the pregnancy at a family dinner before I was ready to share it publicly. She called an interior designer to redo the nursery in colors she chose herself. She started talking about the baby in a way that made my skin crawl. Always our baby, always this family's child, never once acknowledging that there was a mother involved who had thoughts and feelings and rights. Then came the dinner that changed something permanently inside me. We were all sitting at the long dining table, Ryan, Linda, 2 of her business associates and their wives, and Linda was talking about the baby's future, the schools, the upbringing, the values. And she said, with her fork still in her hand and her eyes not even looking at me, the baby will stay in this house and be raised properly with our values, not hers. The table went quiet for just a second. I put down my glass and said, calmly and clearly, I am sitting right here, Linda, and I will be raising my own child. She turned and looked at me the way a person looks at something that has unexpectedly made a noise. Then she waved her hand and said, nobody asked you. Get out of my way. Ryan looked at his plate, the associates looked at the table, and I stood up, excused myself, and walked out of that dining room. I did not cry until I reached the bathroom upstairs. I turned on the tap so nobody would hear me, and then I called my best friend Anna and I said, I need a plan, I cannot do this anymore. That was the night everything began to change, not just for me, but for all of them. Linda had been planning the charity gala for months. It was the most important social event of her year, 50 of the city's most powerful people, all under one roof, all there to see her shine. But the real reason she needed this night to be perfect was business. For 2 years she had been trying to secure an investment deal with Mr. Walter Hess, a self-made billionaire who had built a $300 million real estate empire from nothing. Walter was known for being precise, private, and brutally fair. He did not invest based on charm, he invested based on character. Linda believed this gala was her final chance to impress him enough to close the deal. She had planned every detail of that night perfectly, every detail except me. The morning of the gala she came to my room while I was getting dressed and stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and said, You will stay upstairs tonight. I cannot have you making this awkward in front of these people. I looked at her in the mirror. I did not argue, I just said, okay. She nodded and left, and then I sat down on the edge of the bed and made the quietest and most important decision of my life. I was 8 months pregnant. My back ached every single day. I had not slept properly in weeks. I had been swallowing my dignity in that house for 3 years, and I decided, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of a deep and unshakable belief that I was a human being who deserved to exist in her own home, that I was going downstairs. I put on a simple cream dress, I did my hair, I went downstairs. The gala was in full swing, music low, glasses clinking, laughter floating through the rooms. I walked in quietly, no drama, no announcement, just a woman walking into her own home. Linda spotted me within 60 seconds. I watched her face change from across the room. She excused herself from her conversation and walked directly toward me, and when she reached me, she grabbed my arm and pulled me firmly toward the hallway. What are you doing? She hissed. I told you to stay upstairs. I looked at her and said, I live here too, Linda. Her jaw tightened. She looked back at the room. Guests nearby were beginning to glance over, and she pulled me further into the hallway, and then something in her snapped. Her voice rose. She forgot where she was. She forgot who was in that house. She looked at me with years of stored contempt and said, You have ruined this family from the day you stepped through that door. My son deserves better. That child deserves better. You are absolutely nothing, and you have always been nothing. I stood completely still, 8 months pregnant, feet aching, heart pounding, and I said, I have let you say things like that to me for 3 years, not tonight. She raised her hand and she slapped me hard across the face. The sound cut through the hallway like a gunshot. My cheek burned, my ears rang, and in the silence that followed I became aware of something. We were not alone in that hallway. Standing just 4 feet away, glass of water in hand, having stepped out of the main room just moments before, was Mr. Walter Hess. He had seen every single thing. Nobody moved for what felt like a very long time. Walter set his glass down on the hallway table slowly and carefully, the way a man does when he wants to be sure his hands are free. He looked at Linda, not with anger, with something far more devastating than anger, complete and total disappointment. He said, Mrs. Linda, I have been in business for over 30 years. I have sat across the table from some very difficult people, but I have never, not once, seen anything like what I just watched. Linda's face went white. She tried to recover. She laughed that sharp, social laugh she used when she needed to reset a room and said, Walter, please, this is a private family matter, you must understand. Walter did not let her finish. He said quietly and clearly, "You just struck a pregnant woman in her own home, in front of me. This is not a family matter." He walked past Linda and came directly to me. He looked at my cheek, he looked at my eyes, and he said, "Are you all right?" I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak properly, but I held his gaze and I did not look away and I did not cry. Something passed between us in that moment, a recognition. He saw who I was, and I think he had already decided what he was going to do. He turned to the hallway entrance where several guests had gathered, drawn by the noise. He looked at the room and said simply, "I think we are done for the evening." Then he called his personal driver and arranged for me to be taken wherever I needed to go. Ryan came forward at that point, finally, after everything, but Walter looked at him with the same steady disappointment and Ryan stopped moving. Linda tried one more time to pull Walter aside to explain, to salvage something. He walked past her without a single word. The next morning, Walter's office called Linda's business manager and canceled the investment deal. No explanation was given, none was needed. The banks that had been waiting on that deal to extend Linda's hotel loans began making calls of their own. In the space of 24 hours, because of one slap, Linda's entire financial world began to crack down the middle. She did not know it yet, but she would. I left the estate that night in Walter's car with one bag and my journal. I went to Anna's apartment and I sat at her kitchen table and she made me tea and neither of us said very much for a long time. Ryan sent 3 messages that night. I read them. I did not reply. The following morning I called the women's legal aid counselor I had quietly been speaking to for the past 2 months. I told her everything that had happened. She told me to come in immediately. 3 weeks later, I gave birth to my son Cole in a hospital room with Anna beside me holding my hand. Ryan sent flowers, I sent them back. Linda sent a lawyer with custody papers 4 days after Cole was born. She was so confident. She had money and lawyers and 30 years of social connections, and she genuinely believed that I was going to fold. She had never once paid attention to the fact that I had been quietly, carefully, patiently building a case for months. Dorothy, Walter's wife, reached out to me 2 weeks after Cole was born. She had been at the gala that night. She had seen everything. She was a warm and steady woman, and she sat across from me in Anna's small living room and said, "I want to help you." She connected me with the city's best family court lawyer at absolutely no cost. And Walter, privately, without any fanfare, gave a written witness statement to my lawyer documenting exactly what he had seen in that hallway. When Linda's legal team found out that Walter Hess had given a statement for my side, there was a meeting in their office that I later heard was very loud and very short. The custody case was not the long drawn-out battle Linda expected. My 3 years of journal entries, dates, words, incidents, exact sentences, painted a picture so detailed and so consistent that the judge read through them with visible discomfort. Walter's statement confirmed the pattern of behavior with the authority of someone who had witnessed it firsthand. The ruling came down clearly: full custody to Marjorie, maximum child support from Ryan, and a court order restricting Linda from unsupervised contact with Cole until a full review could be completed. Without Walter's investment, the hotel business unraveled faster than anyone publicly admitted. 2 banks called in their loans within 60 days. Linda gave a press interview trying to control the narrative. She spoke about family loyalty and her son's difficult marriage and implied that I had been the source of all the trouble. Walter gave a rare public statement in response, just 3 sentences. He confirmed what he witnessed, he described it plainly and without emotion, and then he said that character in his experience always reveals itself eventually. Linda's interview was shared widely, but so was Walter's statement. The public response was swift and brutal. 2 of Linda's longest-standing business partners issued quiet statements distancing themselves from her. A charity board she had sat on for 12 years asked for her resignation. Ryan stopped taking her calls. They did not speak for months. Linda called me one afternoon and asked to meet. I agreed. I chose a small public cafe near Anna's apartment, neutral ground, bright lighting, busy enough that nobody could perform a scene. Linda arrived looking smaller than I had ever seen her, not physically, but in some essential way, like something that had been holding her up from the inside had quietly given way. She started talking, explanations, justifications, fragments of something that was almost an apology but could not quite get there. I let her finish. Then I leaned forward and I said, "Linda, I did not come here to fight you. I came here so you could see Cole, because despite everything he deserves to know where his father comes from, but I need you to hear me clearly. You will never have power over me or my son again, not ever, not in any form." She looked at Cole sitting in his carrier on the chair beside me. He was looking up at the ceiling lights with his round, serious eyes. And Linda, this woman who had terrorized me for 3 years, who had slapped me in front of 50 people, who had sent lawyers to my door 4 days after I gave birth, started to cry. Quietly, with her hand over her mouth, I watched her. I did not comfort her, but I did not enjoy it either. I just felt very, very free. I picked up Cole, I stood up, and I walked out of that cafe. I did not look back, not even once. 1 year later, my life looks nothing like anything Linda ever imagined for me, and everything like what I always knew I was capable of building. I went back to teaching, not because I had to, because I wanted to, because those children in my classroom every morning remind me every single day of what actually matters. Anna and I have started a small support group together for women going through what I went through, the quiet kind of abuse that nobody sees because it happens inside beautiful houses behind closed doors. We meet twice a week. The room is always full. Dorothy comes sometimes. She sits in the back and listens, and sometimes she speaks, and when she does, every single woman in that room goes quiet because she says the kind of things that reach directly into your chest and rearrange something. Walter sent Cole a gift on his first birthday, a handwritten card in clean, careful handwriting. It said, "Your mother is the bravest person I have ever seen in a room full of powerful people. Grow up to be worthy of her." I read it 3 times standing at my kitchen counter. Then I put it in Cole's memory box where it will stay until he is old enough to understand what it means. I think about Linda sometimes, not with anger, not anymore. I think about how much energy it must take to be that afraid, because that is what all of it was underneath everything. Fear that her son would choose someone she could not control, fear that her grip on her own life would loosen, fear dressed up as power and cruelty and cold smiles and that final terrible slap. I feel something close to pity when I think about her now. She had everything: money, status, a family that loved her, and she burned it all down trying to destroy me. And I had nothing that night I walked out of that estate, nothing but my journal, my dignity, and my unborn son, and somehow, that was enough to build everything. She thought that slap would silence me. She thought it would break me in front of the right people and send me back to wherever she believed I came from. Instead, it woke up every part of me that had been sleeping. It put me in a car with a $300 million witness. It gave me a lawyer, a community, a purpose, and a life that is completely and entirely my own. I am not grateful to Linda, but I am grateful for what that night revealed about her, about Ryan, and most importantly, about me. I am Marjorie. I was slapped in front of a millionaire at my lowest moment, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. If you made it to the very end of this story, then you already know what this feeling is. It is the feeling of watching someone refuse to be broken. It is the feeling of knowing that dignity, real, quiet, unshakable dignity, will always outlast cruelty. Always. If this story moves something in you like this video right now, not for me, but for every woman who has ever been made to feel like nothing in her own home, share it with one person today who needs to be reminded of their own strength. And subscribe, because every single week I bring you stories about real women who refuse to stay down. I am Marjorie, and I will see you in the next one.